All right. Happy Friday, everyone. My name is Noah.
I'm Brenden.
And we are back with the MedCat Unscripted podcast inside the medical journey. And this is really just a podcast that we're going to talk about what the pre-health journey is like unscripted. There's a lot of things out there. For anyone watching, you're going to hear a lot of different things. But we just wanted to share our experiences. We're going to invite on a lot of different people to share their experiences. We're going to invite on clubs. And we hope at the end of the day, there's going to be a lot of things you can take from this podcast. But the big thing is that there's no one way to get to where you want to go. Everyone has a different story and it's unscripted. It's going to have a lot of ups and downs, and that's what's fun about it.
Yeah, there's a lot of brutal honesty that's going to go on in this podcast.
Yeah.
Honestly, what's needed, which
is good. Before we dive into, what we're going to be talking about today, we kind of just think it's going to be fun to give some updates about what we're up to. I'm a first-year medical student in Tucson. Brendan's a fourth-year medical student, so he's, on his way out. I'm just coming in. But let's see, what's an update with you going on right now?
Yeah, just a casual update on URAS. My residency application was submitted last week, or earlier this week, I say. So yeah, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
I guess I'll share this in the bio, but essentially I applied to child neurology. And I'm very, very excited. That path was not a linear path by any means. Right? And so, I'm excited to kind of sprinkle that into my experiences as we talk a little bit. But then someone had a big test this week.
Yes, we had the MSK midterm yesterday, which went pretty well. MSK is an interesting block. It's a lot of memorizing, but it's just so cool to see how many things go on in the body for you to take a step. We take one step and there's 25 things that had to go exactly right for us to do that. And you never really think about that. So it's been really a good block. We have about 2-3 more weeks and then we have the final. And then we move on to neurology, which we know a lot about, obviously.
No, but the funny thing is during the actual the pre-clerkship block, neuro, I did not have a great time. So that'll be something to talk about later. But I think those are some solid updates for this week.
Yeah. So last episode, we kind of talked about my experiences to get to where I am today. But today it's going to be all about Brenden. So Brenden, if you could kind of briefly just share, we know you went to University of Arizona for undergrad, but maybe what you did at the University of Arizona and then also your path through medical school in Tucson.
Yeah, no, super fair. And the challenge will be crunching this in 5 to 10 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes, but I think we can do it. Essentially, Noah, you and I are going to differ in essentially how we got to the U of A. I was an Arizonan, born and raised. I was born and raised in Phoenix. We have Horizon High School, go Huskies.
Okay.
And when it came time for college, I had applied to 14 or 15 schools. And the only in-state school I applied to was the U of A.
ASU.
Not ASU, not NEU. Those were automatic no's. If I had to go somewhere, it was going to be close enough to home to where I could go home, far enough to where, honestly, my mom couldn't just come in and drop by.
Yep.
And so, I did the campus tours, it did all of that, went to the East Coast, West Coast, and really ultimately came to a campus tour here. And it was just blown away. I was like, this isn't Tucson. I was like, what's going on? Why are there palm trees lining up going to Old Main?
Yeah.
I was truly blown away and ultimately decided, okay, I'm sold. I'm going to come here. Came in as a physiology major and didn't know how to get started. Like you had mentioned in our previous podcast, grades were by far and away my most important thing.
Right.
I knew that I wanted to be pre-health of some kind. I didn't know if it was going to be physician, PA, nurse practitioner, whatever it was. I didn't know at the time, but I knew that grades mattered. So I went ahead, physiology, did my best. And once that got into kind of a flow, I wanted to get involved. Didn't know how I wanted to get involved. Went to a couple of pre-health associated clubs, and honestly, I didn't vibe. I thought it was a little too intense for me. Yeah. It was really cool being with like-minded people, but almost too like-minded to where I was like, is all we're going to talk about medicine? Can we talk about other things too? Totally. And so that actually pushed me away a little bit. And I ended up applying to Arizona Ambassadors to give campus tours because I felt that's had a huge impact on my journey into the U of A. Now, why not give tours myself and try to give back to that community and help some other students? So did that, and that's where I fell in love. I fell in love with giving campus tours. It's the weirdest thing ever, where every Saturday morning I was like, yep, I'm ready to go. And that was what unlocked a lot of doors for me. Going through the pre-health process, I wasn't trying to check boxes. I was just honestly trying to have fun and try to keep a balance. And it was meeting 120 people in that club where it was like, oh, I do research. I do this clinical thing. I do this. Oh, you're at this point, I was starting to become pre-med. And they're like, oh, you're pre-med. Have you thought about this? And it just launched into many, many different experiences. And what I can talk about later is kind of what exactly those experiences are. But ended up in a really fun research lab that I actually am just finishing up with now, 7 years later, 8 years later.
Wow.
And, clinical experiences here at the hospital or within the community. You and I are both familiar with Z Mansion and the Health for Homeless. So that was something that I really, really loved to get involved with. And then a lot of it turned into mentoring via the campus tours. Because as I progressed through my campus tours, I met a lot of students like yourself and like other, freshmen who are incoming pre-health students. And I was able to give my take on, this major allows you to do this. This major allows you to do that. Here's what organizations you can be a part of. And it ended up being just a really wonderful experience for me. And then I did take a gap year prior to applying to medical school. I knew that I was mentally exhausted from undergrad. I had a fantastic time, don't get me wrong. But with COVID coming in during graduation, I knew I needed some time off. So I ended up taking my MCAT the spring of my senior year prior to COVID, and got my score and then started the application process during my gap year. So during my gap year, I was back up in Phoenix. I was scribing and essentially going through the application process, writing secondaries, attending interviews, and thankfully ended up back in Tucson, where I've had really an incredible 4 years. And when we get to the part where we talk about the actual medical school experiences, you and I are going to be really happy to talk about those things. And it's nice that you're at the start of this really, really fun journey. Don't get me wrong, but I'm nearing the end of it, where residency is, I think, almost 6 months away. Crazy. Which is going to be super, super excited. But that's essentially my elevator pitch into, how I ended up here at the U of A for undergrad and continue to be in Tucson for medical school.
Yeah, you made a lot of good points. I think one that really stuck out to me as I was listening with that is that it is critical to get involved in stuff that's not just pre-health related. One is because if you only do pre-health stuff, you're going to get burnt out, you're going to get tired. And the second thing is, and it's not even like the main reason you do these things that are not connected to pre-health, but in those things like ambassadors or anything else, like even ultimate frisbee, like I did that for a little bit. Right. You meet people that are then involved in other stuff and you still get benefits from it as well as doing stuff you enjoy. So that's a really good point. And ambassadors is awesome. So glad you brought that up.
And that's how also I found the honorary system.
Yeah,
that was exactly. That was a very pivotal part of my journey too. And it wasn't, and maybe we could talk about that in another time briefly, but essentially it wasn't a medical thing in any way, shape or form, but there were pre-health students along that path too. And, you find, new study buddies and you develop, study habits and also social habits too. Yeah. To where you find this really nice balance to where you can go to the football game and then go study. And, go to, I don't know how many basketball games I missed, but it wasn't many. I was a big Arizona basketball fan. Yeah. But you develop these really nice study habits with a diverse group of people, and it allows you to have diverse experiences as a result to essentially get you ready for your professional career.
Exactly. And as we mentioned, Brenden and I did both go to the University of Arizona. So a lot of the things we talk about will be focused with stuff in Tucson, but there's things throughout the state, even throughout the country, that we hope people can connect with the experiences we've had.
Right. Because the ultimate goal, like you mentioned at the very beginning, this is not a podcast to tell you what check boxes you need to hit. It's a podcast to honestly tell you the opposite of, there's these overarching themes that developing healthcare providers should exhibit. Yep. But there's no one way to do it. In fact, there's kind of the opposite. There are, an infinite number of ways that you can develop these skills. Yep. And sometimes it's volunteering, sometimes it's clinical, sometimes it's research, sometimes it's work for it, in the workforce. Yep. But that's what we're here to discuss. Yeah. That being totally.
And one cool thing before we end is that's what makes the healthcare field so amazing, is that everyone is so different, but you can only become different if you have different experiences. And if everyone just checked the same box, we would all look the same. It would be tough to separate yourselves. So a huge, huge thing to focus on is just be yourself and be different, because if you be different and you just be yourself, everything else is going to fall into place. But Brenden, thank you so much for sharing your story today. That's all the time we have today on MedCats Unscripted. And we look forward in the future episodes to kind of diving into all the topics that Brenden mentioned today. So we have things like the MCAT, we have things like getting involved in research, getting involved in the community. And then we're also going to invite different individuals that have different stories than ourselves. Brenden and I have awesome stories, but we know we have, 500 plus people that have different stories as well, 1,000 plus people. So we want to hear their stories as well, because maybe you can connect to something that they talk about. And that's really what we want people to be able to do out of this podcast. So without further ado, I'm Noah, and this is
Brenden.
and we will see you guys next Friday.
Right. Take care,
Bye.
everybody.